Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is Education USA Regional. My name is Oksana, and I'm happy to invite you to our monthly webinar. Today, we'll talk about understanding US higher education, how the system really works, degrees and programs. So you know that the American higher education system is unlike any other, with thousands institutions, flexible degree paths, and a structure that can seem confusing at first glance. So today in our webinar, Susan Strow from DePaul University will walk you through how it all works, the types of the institutions, the difference between associate, bachelor's, master's, doctoral degrees, and of course, how academic programs are organized. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the chat and we'll be glad to answer them at the end of our webinar. Thank you, Susan, for joining us today, and the floor is yours.
My name is Susan, as Oksana said, and I am from DePaul University here in the city of Chicago. Today, I'm just going to be walking you through a few different pathways to higher education in the United States, and I'll try and break it down as much as possible exactly what all of these pathways look like. We'll save plenty of time at the end for questions as well. So, as you know, the US is a huge country, and we have a lot of different educational opportunities. So in the next 30 minutes, as I said, we'll just walk through a few of those and then save plenty of time for questions. So first of all, my name is Susan. I have been in higher education for many, many years. I've been with DePaul University for the past 3 years as the director of their international admissions program. Prior to that, I ran an international pathway program at Illinois Institute of Technology. And prior to that, I was the director of international admissions and recruitment at Columbia College Chicago. I've also done study abroad programs. I managed an ESL school, so I have a lot of background and history in higher education, specific to an international population. So, as we dive into the US higher education system, there's a couple of key points that I really want to point out. First of all, we're very decentralized. Institutions have significant independence and shared authority across all levels. And this, of course, is dependent on if you're a private, public institution, and a few other things. But you, in particular, in the United States, U.S. higher institutions of higher education have the opportunity to develop programs and courses that they feel will meet their stated mission and really help provide education to the students that are attending the university. Another thing about U.S. higher education, it's very customized. So in the United States, unlike many countries in Europe, our university system is a 4-year university. One of the reasons is because our U.S. education system doesn't include the A-levels or the upper level college courses that many of the European universities include. But because it is a 4-year university, students get a broad background in the humanities, social sciences, history, political science, English, literature, art. Students have the opportunity to take a course of classes that really helps them round them out as an individual. So as in some countries, let's say you're doing mechanical engineering, all your courses would just dive right into mechanical engineering. But in the United States, you also take those programs, but you also are supplementing your education with more of an understanding of how the world works as a whole and how that will impact your degree and your major. In the US, we actively want to recruit international students. If you're applying to a university in the US and they are recruiting international students, that means they're authorized by the US government to be able to issue SEVIS I-20s, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This enables you to get your student visa to study in the United States. But because we do have a large international student population, we have a lot of support services that are built up specifically for those international students. Most universities have an international student and scholar office. This is where you get assistance with immigration, understanding how to stay in status, looking at CPT, OPT, which are curricular practical training, and optional practical training after you graduate. So universities have this understanding and they're able to help our international students really be successful in their university career. Also in the US, there's a lot of academic and cultural expectations, and this is something that we also try and instill in students. There's a lot of workshops and presentations and just training sessions on how to manage your academics, how to comply with the immigration rules as an international student, and how you can really engage with campus resources. We found that the more students engage with the community as a whole on a university campus, the more successful that they will be. So, in an overview of U.S. higher education, so just breaking it down a little bit more, there are over 4,000 universities in the USA. Actually, I think this went down slightly. There's like 3,800, a couple hundred have closed in recent years because of our enrollment cliff here in the US. But for public universities, for the most part, these operate with public taxes. This means that international students may pay a slightly higher tuition than students from that state. So if you're looking at the state of Michigan and you're looking at Michigan State, which is my alma mater, so maybe international students might pay a little bit higher than a student coming from the state of Michigan. This is also the same for students who might be coming from outside Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, California. They're all going to pay slightly higher. Some public universities, in order to build their international population and more diversity within the university, may offer international students in-state tuitions. So one thing you're going to hear me say a lot during this presentation is it's really important that you review the institution's websites because, as I said, there's a lot of schools in the United States and they all have slightly different requirements and rules. So just remember, if you're looking at a school in the US, make sure you're checking out their website. Then there's also private universities. This is like DePaul University is a private university. We have a board, we have private funding, we're not for profit, so all the tuition from the students goes back into facilities, goes back into the education, goes back into salary. So our goal is not to make a profit, it's to provide an awesome education for students. With private universities, usually scholarships are slightly higher for international students because we have the ability to develop our own scholarship scheme. Also, tuition at a private university is usually, and I'm going to say usually a lot because there's always exceptions, is usually the same for international students, domestic students, in-state and out-of-state. We also have schools that focus on kind of like technical engineering. We call them like STEM schools or science and math. One of the schools that I worked at in Chicago area was really focused on the STEM. This is Illinois Institute of Technology. So a lot of programs in mechanical engineering, aeronautical engineering, chemical engineering, CS. So it's just a different kind of category of schools. Still, you're going to have a gen ed core, but it is going to strongly focus on the sciences and math. Finally, we can look at liberal arts. These are focused more on the humanities and social sciences. Some liberal arts colleges might not have a graduate program, some do. Once again, just double check. For liberal arts, this would be something like looking at Dartmouth, looking at some of the smaller schools throughout the United States. Many of these will be humanities, social sciences, etc. All the education you're going to get from all of these universities is a good education. You're going to graduate from all of these universities with a degree, a 4-year degree for the first few. So it's just up to you what you're looking at. But don't get concerned saying, oh, I only need to go to a private university. I only need to go to a public university. They're basically all the same. It's just different categorizations, and it kind of identifies the programs you're going to have. Finally, something a little bit different is the community colleges, and these are down here at the end. So for community colleges, these are in the most part a 2-year college where you will get an associate's degree. An associate's degree is a 2-year program. It's still a good program. It's not a 4-year bachelor's or Bachelor of Science degree, but it is an associate's degree. Many students going to community colleges do so to save money because studying at a community college is less expensive than studying at a 4-year college. But remember, it's just for 2 years. So what students do is they go to a community college, they get all their gen eds taken care of, math, humanities, social sciences, history, lit, English, and then they transfer to a 4-year school. Many schools in the United States have these transfer paths set up with community colleges. I know DePaul University does this with many of the colleges in the Chicagoland area. One thing to remember about community colleges, though, is they usually do not have housing available because they are set up for the community and they're also funded by taxpayers, by taxes. So, but because they're set up for community funded by taxes, they usually don't have residence halls, though they might have a homestay program. So one thing that you should definitely think about when you're looking at a community college. So also kind of breaking, now that we know the types of schools in the United States, I want to talk a little bit about our academic calendar. Most of the schools in the US are on a semester system, and this divides the year into a fall and spring term. Spring term starts in January. All of us are coming from climates with 4 seasons. We know spring is not January, but there is a fall and spring term. Fall usually starts sometime mid to late August, early September, and spring at a semester institution usually starts sometime in January. Now, there are a few schools on the quarter system. DePaul University is one of these schools on the quarter system. We divide the year into a fall, which starts sometime in September, a winter, which starts sometime in January, and a spring term, which starts in late March. These are 10-week terms. One of the benefits of a quarter system is students are able to take a few more classes each year because you have 3 times out of the year when you can select your classes. Terms are only 10 weeks long, so it also means you're going to be very busy. And if you're having challenges getting your visa, usually we don't have usually it's only, you have to arrive within the first week at the latest, just because that quarter is so short. Another kind of benefit of the quarter system is there's a long break between fall semester and winter semester. In some schools, it's about a month. This is great because you can do a study abroad. If you've been at school for a year, you can do maybe a short internship, or you can just travel. The challenge with this, though, also is some schools will close their residence halls during this period, so you have to find a place to stay. Once again, like I said before, it's important that you look at each university's academic calendar and their website. But most of the schools in the US do use semester, quite many, and some use the quarter system. One thing to think about when you're applying to school, I think people always just say, oh, I'm going to start in the spring semester, and they automatically think that's going to be in January because that's normal, quote unquote normal. But remember, if you're looking at a quarter system, there's a big difference between the winter start and the spring start. Okay. So once again, understanding the academic calendar really helps students plan your arrivals, visa, housing, and to travel efficiently. Most of the schools, especially if you're an undergraduate student and it's your first year, most of the universities do want you to arrive, if you're starting in the fall in August or September, about a week early, because that's when you do all your orientations. So just something to always think about when you're looking at a school. Also, every school has someone like me and my team at the school. You can always reach out to the international manager of your particular region. So another thing I think is really important before choosing a university is really to do a deep dive into yourself. what do you want to do? Where do you want to study? What type of environment do you want to be in? Are you looking for an institution with a lot of connections to industry? Do you want research? Do you want just to, to be in a really diverse location? Do you want to be in the countryside? Do you want to be in the city? There is a school for everyone in the United States. And I think it's really important that you know yourself first before really focusing on the university you want to attend. Like, what are your goals and how are you going to find an institution that matches and meets your goals? So these are just a couple of things to look at. There's a few different self-assessments online I recommend that you check out. Or as I said, you can just do a deep dive into yourself. Like, why do you want to study in the United States? What are your goals and objectives? This is also really important for you to be able to, I think, verbalize, because when you go for your visa interview, you might get some of these questions from the consular officer, right? Why do you want to study in the United States? Why not stay in your home country? Why not go to the UK? Why not go to Australia, Singapore, Italy? So you have to figure out, why do you want to study in the US? First of all, I personally think it's a great place to study just because of the diversity of programs and the ability to kind of like craft your own courses. But something that you really need to think about. Also, what are your academic interests and what's your career outlook? What do you want to do with this degree? Why does studying finance at DePaul University mean so much to you? Like, how are you going to take that degree and transition that into your career? And then also another thing, as I said earlier, I think most of us are coming from countries where we have 4 seasons: fall, winter, spring, and summer. But really think about the location and the environment. There's many universities in large cities, which is really great. If you're coming from an urban environment and you like being in the hustle and bustle, look at a university in the city. There's some universities, in smaller towns that basically in the entire town is the university. Something to look at there. And also look at, kind of what's the environment like. Chicago has all 4 seasons and I love it. Sometimes I don't love winter too much, but I do love it. Because you get really excited waiting for spring or enjoying summer or watching the beauty of fall. But, environment also plays a big role. Another thing you want to look at is your subjects, the subjects and majors. So we have a lot of different degrees in the US. AA, which I talked about earlier, that's from a community college. That is an associate's degree, okay? BA, Bachelor of Arts. BS, Bachelor of Science. BBA, Bachelor of Business Administration. BHS, Bachelor of Health Science. BFA, Bachelor of Fine Arts. The BA, BS, BBA, BHS, and BFA are all fairly similar. Bachelor of Fine Arts might have a few more studio classes. This is for people interested in fine arts or graphic design. Some of the theater programs are BFA, so just something to look at there. The main difference between, for example, at DePaul, we have Economics BA and Economics BS. The BA Economics is more humanities focused. The BS is more science and maths focused, okay? Also, there's STEM, which is in itself is not a degree, it's just a designation. A STEM program is usually a BS, I believe, with STEM programs, engineering, some architecture programs, finance, economics, data analytics, some of the health sciences. These can be STEM programs, which means you have a 3-year OPT, optional practical training, after you graduate from university, okay? Another thing you need to look at when you're looking at universities is do some research of the faculty. Each university should highlight faculty from each department, and you can see what the faculty are doing. So let's say you're interested in doing something in data analytics and there's a specific field that you're interested in, and you jump onto a university's website and you notice that they don't really have a lot of faculty focusing on this particular area that you're looking at. maybe look at a different school then, or maybe reach out to them and see what type of research opportunities are available. And also specialization. All majors have specific specializations. This is also something that you can find on the website, especially if you're a master's student or a graduate student looking for your master's program, MA, MS, MBA. It's really important that you are doing research on the faculty as well, because the faculty is basically the backbone of an institution, and that is where a lot of the learning and education is going to come from. So, so when you begin your university research, there's a couple of different things that you can start looking at. First is accreditation. You want to make sure that the university you are looking at is fully accredited. This is an outside body, and all universities can get accreditation at the regional and I think national level. You want to look for region. Actually, don't quote me on that. I have to remember. But you want to look at the level of academic quality. And it's really important that when you're looking at an outside board's looking at the university, they're assessing each university on a specific set of criteria. So knowing that a university is fully accredited and majors are fully accredited, it's really important, especially if you're an undergraduate student and you're thinking, hey, maybe I'm going to go to a university A, and then you're at university A and you're like, oh, you know what? I don't like it here. I want to transfer to university B. If university A was not accredited at the same quality of university B, your classes will not transfer. Most of the schools that you will be looking at will be fully accredited, but it's something to remember as well. Also, some programs have specific accreditation. So these are other things that you can look at. Rankings. Oh, there's so many pros and cons for rankings. Like, as an international student trying to figure out where to study in the US, I understand why rankings are important, but you have to take them all with a grain of salt, right? You have to make sure that the rankings you're looking at are for your specific major, right? And not for the university as a whole. I always use, an example of, there's one of the Ivy League schools is highly ranked, right? But if you want to study nursing, maybe it's not the best place for you to go. So take all the rankings with a grain of salt. Also remember that many rankings are kind of a pay to play. You pay an organization more money and they're going to rank you a little bit higher. So something to consider. Also look at what is the industry reputation? There are alumni from U.S. universities everywhere throughout the world. Education USA knows a lot of these alumni. They might have an alumni office in your town from a specific university that you're looking at. Reach out to the alumni, especially if you're a graduate student. Reach out to the alumni, get their unbiased opinion of what the school was like, how it helped them with their career. Also speak with friends, do online research, and attend presentations like this that Education USA puts up. Also, most universities do recruit internationally, and you can also often find us at various international recruitment events. Okay. So now that's a little bit about the academics. We're going to jump a little bit to what life is like on campus. So in the United States, most universities have libraries, research facilities, labs, equipment. If you are going into research, once again, check the website. You want to make sure that research facilities exist, okay? All universities should have a library. If they don't have a library, that might be a little bit concerning. Often in the libraries, they're going to have, it might be in the library, it might be associated with the library. There's probably going to be study rooms. There's going to be tutoring facilities. The goal of a good university in the United States is to give students the tools they need to be successful. So if you're struggling in math, you can connect with a math tutor, which the university can find for you. If you're struggling in writing, Not only do international students struggle in this area, but US students struggle a lot in this area. There's writing facilities on campus. As I said, our goal is to make sure that you are successful. Also, another thing to look at is partnerships. So while university is 4 years or 2 years, if you're a master's student, it's really important that you are building your network and gaining connections in the industry. One of the ways that you can do this is by looking at partnerships that universities do offer. Some schools also have co-op programs, which are pretty amazing. My friend's daughter is going to a university that has a co-op program, and I think they study for like 2 quarters, and then they do a co-op for a quarter. So it's kind of a cool setup. And then also you want to look at recreation and extracurricular activities, because while studying is very important, it's also important that you continue to think about and pay attention to you. Are you getting everything you need socially, mentally, physically? So we want to make sure that you have access to all the support services that you need. And also by joining groups, and maybe sports groups or study groups or special interest groups, you can begin to build your community around you. So we spoke a little bit about this already. I'm going to just touch upon it. But another thing that you're looking at and will impact your experience at a university is the location. Urban, city center, access to museums, lots of restaurants, nightclubs, internships. You do not need a car in an urban city. Similar probably to your countries. Then there's suburban. These are more of a family feel, larger houses, apartments. You might need a car, especially in the United States. If you're outside of the city, we have horrible public transportation. So students going to university outside of the cities usually stay on campus or right around campus, so they can walk to classes. And then there's more rural universities. There's a lot of access to the outdoors if you're interested in agriculture or animal husbandry or something like that. I feel like a rural university would be a really good connection for you and really good place. And then the other thing is climate. This is a presentation I've used for my students from Southeast Asia. Obviously, I think you guys all understand the 4 seasons, but this is just something that, we want to highlight. In Chicago, in particular, we do have every single one of these seasons. Right now we're in spring, which one day it's winter, the next day it's spring, the next day it's summer. So it's a little, challenging right now. Okay, the big stuff, cost and value. I know all of you are probably thinking about this. How do you afford a U.S. higher education? Let me show you a few things. So tuition varies by institution type, okay? Private universities are sometimes a little bit more expensive, but remember, we have higher scholarships. There's also living expenses. Tuition does not include room and board. It does not include housing. It does not include transportation. It does not include travel. That is living expenses. So when you're looking at university, you have to look at tuition. You have to look at and then subtract your scholarship, and then the estimated living expenses. If you're going to be living in the city, that's usually a little bit higher, but the trade-offs are access to internships. There's different financial aid. If you do not hold a U.S. passport, you are not eligible to apply for FAFSA, which is the federal application for student aid, I believe. If you have a non-U.S. passport, your financial aid usually is scholarships. Sometimes at the graduate level, there's work opportunities, like research opportunities or teaching assistantships. There's also grants and loans from banks in your home country. Different ways to get money. Many universities do offer scholarships. I know at DePaul we have very strong scholarships. Ours are merit-based, which means they are based solely on your GPA at the undergraduate level. International students do have fewer funding options, but the merit-based scholarships are definitely something that you need to look at. One of the things I want to draw your attention to is every year I get emails from students saying, hey, this university offered me $10,000 more a year than DePaul. But if you look at the cost of attendance, which is tuition plus expected living expenses, right? Their cost of attendance is higher than DePaul. So having that additional scholarship doesn't really make the university less expensive. So these are all things that you need to consider when you're looking at scholarship and you're kind of estimating your cost of expenses. One of the reasons why we need to state living expenses on our website for international students is it all goes back to your SEVIS I-20. We need to show the US government that you have enough money to support yourself for at least 1 year. And that is tuition plus cost of attendance or living expenses, minus your scholarship, okay? So when you're looking at finances, I mean, we all want things that we can't afford, right? So you really need to ask yourself if you can afford the university. What COA means cost of attendance. So if you can afford the university, and what is the cost of attendance? As I said, there are so many things we all want. And unfortunately, most of us aren't in the position to be able to get everything that we want. So things to think about. Another thing you need to look at are there scholarships for international students. Some university websites are really not that good at identifying scholarships. So I always recommend reaching directly out to the university and asking them about their scholarships for international students. Ask about the application process for scholarships. Sometimes it's a separate application. Sometimes it's the same application. At DePaul, you are automatically considered for scholarships at the time of admissions, okay? And then cost of living. Before, when we were talking about rural, urban, city environment, obviously, if you're living in the city, the cost of living is going to be much higher than if you're living in the countryside in the United States. But also remember, there's a trade-off. So you don't need a car. You have access to everything an urban environment has to offer. So just once again, just a few things to think about. Also, another thing to look at are career outcomes. So you or your parents are paying a lot of money for you to go to university. What's going to happen after you graduate? Does a university have a career center? Most schools in the US do have a career center. These are centers that are set up to help students get the tools they need to apply for jobs, to write a resume, to interview, to put a cover letter together. Career centers also bring many companies onto campus each year to speak with students. So when you're looking at universities in the US, as I said, most of them do have a career center, but just make sure you look at the career center, and you look at what some alumni are doing, you look at placement rates, and you kind of look at success rates for each major. Most career centers at larger institutions do have this information. So I strongly recommend you take a look at this. Then the next part is we always get these questions. What is the admissions process like? Most schools use a holistic approach when they're looking at applications. But you need to be totally honest, like the first and foremost thing schools are looking at are your grades. So those are super important. But also, if you're borderline, we're going to look at some of the activities that you've done. Maybe you're some clubs. Some schools do use standardized tests, SAT, ACT. We personally do not use either one of those, but we do have a TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo. Basically, every international applicant will need to prove that they are proficient in English. All schools have different requirements, and you can just look on the website to see what their process is. At the undergraduate level, many universities are on the Common App, which makes it very easy for students. At the graduate level, for many universities, you have to apply directly to that department. Once again, just double check the website. Now, some things about admissions requirements to look at. Once again, as I said, check the university website. Some universities have an application fee. We do not at the undergraduate level. Then there's another thing like rolling admission. So there are early action and early decision, which are prior to rolling admissions. Rolling admissions means after the deadline, we will still accept applications based on availability and space. Most universities right now are still accepting applications. It is not a problem. And once again, early action and early decision, just two things that we were talking about. Early action is non-binding. Early decision, wait, am I getting this wrong? Yeah. Early decision is binding. So if you're an undergraduate student and you've applied early decision to an institution and they offer you they offer you a place, you are supposed to pull all your other applications. It is a binding decision. Think carefully about this, talk to your advisor, talk to Education USA. Usually early decision if you're going to a very competitive school, or you might have a slightly higher chance of getting in with early decision. But remember, they might not have scholarships, and you might get a better offer from another school. So a lot of things that you need to weigh here. Also, application criteria, once again, different at every school. At DePaul, we make an admissions decision at the undergraduate level based on unofficial transcripts. But if you are admitted and you enroll, we have to see those official transcripts before you can register for classes, okay? And then the other things, once again, on the website, proof of English, essay, sometimes resume is quite common in master's programs. One thing about the essay too, speak from the heart. We don't want to read something that obviously comes from ChatGPT. Speak from the heart and make sure you proofread it. Please, please proofread, okay? So there's a few things that you can start doing right now to start researching universities in the US. First of all, looking at your EdUSA advisors, attending the virtual university presentations like this, speaking with alumni, attending university fairs, and also reviewing the university website, paying close attention to your major. There's a few different questions to ask when you go to a university fair. These are all pretty self-explanatory, but it always amazes me when I'm meeting with prospective students. Their first question is always, oh, do you have scholarships? Well, what if we have scholarships, but we don't offer a subject that you're interested in? So start at the top, make sure we have the subject that you want, talk about career outcomes, where the university is. So start big and then go down to the cost of attendance and scholarship questions. And it creates a better dialogue too between you and the university counselor. And then this is just a quick checklist I put together. This was for a group of undergraduate students I met with, but I think it's relevant for undergraduate and graduate. But just kind of like a little self-inventory or checklist that you might want to look at when you're looking at schools in the United States. And just a few other resources here. I don't think many of those are too well but that's about it. That was a lot of talking. I know there's probably quite a few questions. So Oksana, I'm not sure how we do the questions, but if anyone has questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a wonderful, amazing overview of all the things that we need to know about education in the United States. At this moment, we have more than 100 live viewers. So I think, yeah, that's great. That's amazing. So really have a couple of questions. I will try to find them in the chat. And thanks everyone for joining us today. So I will start with the one. Just a second. I saw it in the chat. We have many comments from students today. Yeah, and it sounds like this. Thank you. And you can also see it on the screen.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I saw one about IELTS.
Yeah,
I can answer that
yeah,
one.
it was the last one. So is there a regional limit on how many international students a university can accept? For example, a university can accept only 3-5 students from Caucasus region.
Yeah. So once again, that depends on on universities, but I have never heard of a university limiting international student enrollment from a specific country. I haven't heard of that. It might happen, but I don't think that's common. So
That's great. So you're lucky to your students, no limits for
yeah.
you. That's great. So the second one, what are the potential downsides of education in research institutions? Is there something students applying for research institutes should keep in mind?
Yeah, I don't think there are any potential downsides of education in a research institution. I think if anything, it's a benefit because it gives you that real world experience that's going to be necessary for your career. So I don't feel like there's there's anything bad about a research institution. I do know that research institutions in the U.S. are ranked. There's R1, Art Research One, which is one of the larger research institutions. R2, R3. I'm not sure if it goes down to R4, but yeah, so it just depends on the amount of research. Some universities have research opportunities, which personally I think every university should have research opportunities. But there's a lot of funding that goes into some of these research institutions. And yeah, if you're going into any major that's research heavy, I strongly, strongly recommend looking in an institution at R1 or R2 level.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. One more question about the exams, for example, IELTS.
Mhm.
So the student asks, is it acceptable for the American university or like she should pass something else?
No, IELTS is totally fine. I think at all the universities, the most common are Duolingo, sorry, are TOEFL and IELTS, followed by Duolingo. Most of our students coming from Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, that whole region, the Caucasus, all take the IELTS, so it's totally fine. Most schools have a 6.5 IELTS requirement. Some will go down to 6.0, but most are 6.5.
Thank you so much. So some general questions, for example, how we can improve our application to the university.
Oh, it's always such a difficult one because it's so dependent on the university as well. If you're an undergraduate student, so applying for an undergraduate program, they always say, like, how do you have to build the perfect profile? Don't join clubs and do like community service jobs just because it feels like it's going to build your profile. I would recommend focusing on things that you are passionate about and that you want to do, which kind of will enhance you and enhance your application. But I feel like students stress out about this so much. Ultimately, we're looking at everything holistically. We want to make sure that you are going to be successful. So
Yeah, that's true.
it's such a hard question to answer.
Yes,
So many students are
always,
so worried
always.
about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. One more question. Does doing a summer program or research at the university increase your chances of being admitted to that same university?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know if it actually increases your chances. I do think it gives you an understanding or a good idea if this is the right fit for you or if this is the type of institution that you want to go to. So, I mean, there's a lot of students, I don't know if Harvard is summer programs or Yale, but if you go to a summer program at Harvard or Yale, I mean, it's not going to increase your chances of getting in. But I do think it's incredibly important if you have the finances and if this is something that's feasible for you and your family, that you take a look at some of the summer programs because it gives you kind of like an insight to the United States. It gives you an insight to that specific university and what a U.S. classroom education is like. So I think it can enhance you. It can be important for you. I don't know if it will necessarily get you into a university. Also, another thing which I've noticed recently, and I was talking with my colleagues too, there's a lot of students who feel, and this has happened just in the last couple of years, that they need to do research opportunities prior to coming to the university. And some of these students will pay to do research, so their name is on a research paper. You don't need to do that. Many universities won't even look at that, and you're paying someone to do something that's not necessary. So something to think about.
That's a good advice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We also have like many questions about funding, of course, and scholarship and things like that. So I would like to mention to our viewers that we will have separate webinars about financial aid and scholarship. So please keep your questions for these webinars. Today we'll talk only about some general questions and education in the United States. So just a couple more questions about the exam. So what is more important than the IELTS exams?
Your grades are very important. Grades are very important. I would just say grades and English proficiency. So as I said, for English proficiency too, if you've gone to a school where there are many different ways to meet English for each university in the United States. And I'm going to use DePaul and some of the other schools I've worked at as an example. So we're looking at Duolingo, we're looking at TOEFL, we're looking at IELTS. If you've done your IGCSEs O-levels, C or better in English first language, we'll look at that. We'll look at IB, 5 or above in English. We'll look at APs. So there's a lot of different ways to prove English proficiency. Of course, if you're coming from a school in the UK and you've spent all of your life we don't need English proficiency. So there's a few countries where we don't need it. But for the most part, we're pretty, we have a lot of different ways to prove proficiency. And once again, like I've been saying this whole time, our goal is to make sure that you are going to be successful. If you can't speak English, you're spending a lot of money to maybe not be that successful. So
yeah, that's true. Thank you so much for
yeah.
sharing. What is the common error that international students do when apply to the universities?
There's a couple. I'm going to talk about essay first because this drives me crazy. So I totally get it. My colleagues get it that when you're applying to many different universities at the undergraduate level, you're going to have an essay and you're just going to tweak it or change a few things for each university, right? Make sure you check the name of the university you are applying to. I can't tell you how many times I've received an application or an essay. I am very excited to go to Loyola University. We're not Loyola University, we're DePaul University. So make sure you're proofreading your essays. The other thing is on the Common App in particular, when you're filling out all your education, we basically need to know your high school and maybe your middle school if it was 9th grade, right? So we don't need to have every single participation certificate that you had. I think it's important for you, but we don't need to know that you were captain of your volleyball team. So basically just follow the instructions online. Also, the other thing which drives us a little bit crazy is when students are like, I want to apply to DePaul University. How do I do that? Or any university, you send them the link and then they're like, but I don't know what to do. I'm like, well, look at the website. Everything is on the website. So just making sure that you are doing your due diligence and making sure you're also doing your research before you reach out to your application manager. So yeah, just make sure you do your research.
Yeah, thank you. So we still receive many questions, but I would like just to help Susan to answer some of them. And just one more time to remind you that all the questions that are connected to funding, relevant, scholarship, and so on, we will have additional webinars for you guys. If you have any specific questions regarding motivational letters, so it's not now, of course. So we just start, yes, and we talk about general information, degrees, and so on. You will be able also to reach out to our advisors and ask the questions as well. I think we can cover one more question about recruitment of international students. So you mentioned that universities and colleges, they recruit students. Students ask, how does that happen usually?
Okay. Yeah, I want to answer that one. There's one other question I saw come through about APs, IBs. I want to answer that too. But for recruitment, what we do for recruitment, and I'll talk based on my experience, which I think this is what a lot of universities are doing at the undergraduate level. We use open doors reports. We look at general trends. We look at the community where we are in. For example, in Chicago, there's a huge Kazakh and Kyrgyz community, Lithuanian community. So we kind of like identify regions that we think would be helpful for our institution, and then we go on recruitment trips. So we go to Education USA has recruitment trips that I've done quite a few times. There's a lot of other different companies that do recruitment trips. So usually we set up fairs in your home country, and we meet with prospective students and we share information about our university. You give us your information, and then we add you to our like information campaign, and we'll send you information about the university. Most universities also have a lot of virtual sessions. I know at DePaul we have virtual sessions for admitted students a couple of times a week, a month, for prospective students like once or twice a month. So we want to make sure we're opening the access and the doors to you. So that's one thing we're doing for recruitment. The other thing I wanted to touch on is someone mentioned APs, IBs, all that kind of stuff. So when you're looking at an undergraduate degree, in order to be eligible to apply for university, we usually need to see high school completion, right? But there's different curricula you can study. National curricula, the AP US curricula, the IGCSEs, GCSEs, the British curriculum, all of those are fine. But one of the benefits of A-levels, IB, AP, you don't have to take these courses, but if you do, and you reach a certain level, you get a certain grade, most universities award academic credit for those grades, okay? So, for example, I have a student from Pakistan. She did her A-levels in Pakistan. She's graduating 1 quarter earlier because she had so many transfer credits that came from those courses. So it's not like it's going to help you with admissions into into your university, but it could save you some time and some money. So that's the only thing. But if taking IB or AP is going to be too expensive, it's not worth it, right? So I hope that helped.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And we also have similar questions regarding IB schools, whether
Yes,
we
same.
have more chances of getting accepted. So I would also support Susan's idea and say that it's up to you, how you show yourself as a student. Yeah, not like your only grades and that's it. Thank you so much. So maybe the last closing question about extracurricular activities. How do you think if the student has not very long list of these activities, will that influence the application?
Once again, this goes back to, and I know it's like a non-answer, but it goes back to the type of institution you're applying for. I know at my institution, at some of the institutions where my colleagues are working as well, we want to see you as a well-rounded person. We don't need a huge long line of extracurricular activities at all. We just want to see you're well-rounded. Like you could have a perfect 4.0, but if you have no clubs or activities, we might be like, ooh, is this student only studying all the time or do they have any other outside interests? So I know this is such a difficult question and you're probably going to get a different answer if you're talking to if you're talking to someone from a smaller private liberal arts college, but it's a difficult question. I personally just want to see like 1 or 2 to show a well-rounded student. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. So this is actually what is special about education in United States, that you can be different. Yeah, so not only your grades that value or extra activities that you do, not only essay that you write, but everything together can influence your application. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We received, I think, hundreds of questions. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. And of course, special thank you to you, Susan, for this wonderful presentation and for covering all the things that is necessary for our students. If you are interested in joining to our next events, dear students, you can register online and write your questions there so that we could be ready and we could prepare in advance. Thank you so much, everyone, and see you next week.
All right. Thank you. Bye.